Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we will explore the cause and effect of just saying yes in your everyday life or in business. I will dig into topics that are not just stimulating, but will challenge you to be better in everything you do. The podcast is based on the simplicity of saying yes to opportunities you might encounter every single day. I'm your host, Jim Riley. Join me in my first series titled Blue Collar Redefined. Hello and welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast. We're here for another Wednesday of our show. And, I've had a lot of correspondence with people online via email, cell, text, what have you, social media. And I'm usually pretty excited about the guests that I have coming on. But today, I don't know what it is, but my guest today put a smile on my face before I even had a chance to meet her over the phone or online. And I'm very excited to bring somebody special to the show today, and that is Leslie Zann, like Ann. And Leslie, I've got you on the phone right now. How's it going today?
I'm good. Nice to be with you, Jim. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's just go right to it. You said that the last name, Zann, was something that came out of divorce, and you just, what is the deal there? Because, well, I got to know.
Well, so my married name was a very complicated name, and as a professional speaker, I was always spelling it. It was very hard to pronounce, and I used to tease when I was married that he was worth every consonant until obviously he wasn't worth every consonant. And so after the divorce, many people many women choose to go back to their maiden name. Well, my maiden name is a very complicated Russian name. And I thought, why would I go from a very complicated married name to a very complicated maiden name? So on your whole idea of saying yes, I said yes to doing what I want to do. And so it's not completely random. My given name is Leslie Ann. And so in numerology, there's 3 abundance letters, H, Q, and Z. And at the time I was 50 years old, and I thought, I could use all the abundance I could get. So I put a Z in front of my middle name, Leslie Zann, went on LegalZoom.com. I legally changed my name. And wherever I go, people say, Leslie Zann, that's such a cool name. And I'm like, yeah, I made it up, which always makes them laugh. I don't do that in the airports anymore, but everywhere else, it makes everyone smile a little bit. And it was very empowering. Like, that was a big empowering yes moment.
I love it. I'm so glad that you did that because it's so fitting now. And, I complimented you on your website when I was looking through your materials a couple weeks ago. And it's a gorgeous website. You've got a big smile on your face. And now I can match the name with the person and now the story behind the name. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Well,
That's good.
Typically on our show, we talk about, our history and where we came from and how we achieved our success in life. And you gave me a little taste of that. But I still want to take you back to your early years, when you started your first career, where you started working at, or what life was like in college or just out of high school. Can you give us a little bit of background?
Sure. I was the middle of 3 girls. I come from a football family. So my grandfather, I'm from here in San Diego. My grandfather was the head coach of the Chargers. So I feel like I grew up in Jack Murphy Stadium. And, that was an interesting upbringing where winning and losing played a much bigger role than it perhaps does in most people's lives. And that really stuck with me in a lot of ways. So through school, I loved school. I loved being in school. I'm the middle of 3 girls, so I was never shy and very social. So I loved school and then went out to University of Arizona. And, it's just, life was not a lot of traumas, growing up.
Yeah.
Happy, loved school, had good friends. It was a good life.
So did you have any jobs when you were young? Like a lot of people we talked to had lemonade stands or they were paper, boys, girls, things like that. Did you have any entrepreneurial activities when you were young?
Well, I started to work in my dad's office. He was a doctor. And so I remember working very early in my father's office on the summers. And then I worked all through high school because I was very keen on buying a car and saving for a car. So I would take the bus from high school to a little pizza parlor, and I worked there all through high school. And, I always worked. And I managed restaurants for many years, and I always really defined myself. Looking back now, really did define myself as successful in business. Mm-hmm. I was always successful in business. I always had a good job. Always had a good career. I didn't really find my full passions and creativity until I became an entrepreneur. And that's really, and I've been that most of my life, that's really where I've been able to shine, being my own boss.
So let's talk a little bit about, early careers, things that you were doing. Obviously, you talked about being married because there was clearly a divorce where you changed your name. Can you tell us a little bit about your married life and what you were doing then?
Well, my husband is retired now, was a dock master. So he dry docked ships for the Navy. He was one of about 12 guys in the country that brought the ships out of the water into dry dock. And so he had a very cool job. He was a former Marine. And he was very busy doing that. And I had a very successful, thriving direct selling business and was doing that for about 16 years. That gave me my first real sense of being an entrepreneur and leadership and the possibilities and all the creativity that comes with leading a team and working with salespeople and being a salesperson myself. So, things were plugging along, what I thought, at a very good pace until I came home from a gig and basically John said, I'm not in love with you anymore. Mm-hmm. Which, to be able to say that today, I don't mean to sound flip or that it wasn't life-altering. It's been 8 years now. At the time, it shattered everything. It completely shattered my life in so many ways, as I'm sure any listener who's been through a divorce from your best friend or have heard somebody say, I don't love you anymore, and how that can impact you in so many ways. And that was 8 years ago, and I chose to send myself through that grief into a new chapter in my life.
Mm-hmm. Not that divorce and marriage is a business transaction, but, both require a lot of emotions and strength to go through them or to stay in them. And clearly it's something that you're on the other side of now. But any tips or things that you pulled from during that time of divorce and kind of getting through that to become whole again?
Oh, my gosh. I could write a book. I could write 10 books. Well, first of all, I was a very good griever. So I tell people, please grieve. I cried every day for 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to be that girl that gets sick because she held it all in. So grieving played a key role. Forgiveness was probably my best lesson. Even feet on the floor, Jim, when it first happened, there was this little voice in my head that said, Leslie, this can help you become the best Leslie you could be if you make that choice. Like, I had that sense that this really was going to give me an opportunity, even though when I was so full of grief, I didn't really see that clearly. But I began to work on forgiveness, and that was very hard in the beginning because I thought I had to jump right to unconditional forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And then I found this terrific book where the woman talked about how, hey, you don't have to start with unconditional forgiveness. You can start with acceptance. And that was so liberating for me. I've had many girlfriends, and I've had my parents as a great example. I mean, my mom 50 years later, is still mad. I mean, I knew at the time I didn't want to be that mad, bitter ex-wife. That's not who I am. That's not what I wanted to turn into. And so the work on forgiveness, saying yes to forgiveness and going through that process of acceptance and to where ultimately I could say to John, which I did, it was important for me to say it to him face to face, that I authentically forgive him, could take my responsibility in the breakup. And, I have nothing left unsaid because that choice I made to work on the forgiveness process. Mm-hmm. Forgiveness, Jim, I've learned forgiveness is for the forgiver. Like, I couldn't change anything that happened. I can only change the way I responded to what happened. That's a great lesson.
I love it. I love it. Well, you said just in our brief 1 minute pre-recording here that really your career began after the divorce, and that's where you started to see it flourish. What were some of the steps that you went through to find that within yourself and create this, spurt of new business or new outlook on the way that you approach business in your career?
Yep. Well, I've been doing speaking and training for my own business. And then I took I was 8 years corporate with 4 different direct selling companies. And that 8-year period, even though it was full of a lot of satisfaction working with the salespeople, the politics of corporate life, like I said, I'm really an entrepreneur at heart, but I never found the courage to step away from that. And every time John and I talked about perhaps my stepping away, he was supportive, but he made a very good case. What if you don't make a lot of money right away, and how's that going to impact our retirement plans? And those were all good reasons, and I hid behind those excuses and never made a shift. And so after the divorce, I'll never forget, I had, was sitting on the sofa thinking I want to have my own business. Like, I want to do what I'm good at, what I love to do. I want to speak and train and coach and do, but I want to do it on my terms. But I was afraid. Mm-hmm. I bought the home in the divorce, so I had a big mortgage. It was 8 years ago. If people think back, we were right in the middle of that huge recession. So, and I even did a little focus group of speakers, professional speakers who had seen me speak, and they all pretty much said the same thing, like, Leslie, you're good. This is not a great time, or you're really good, and I'm not getting gigs now, or I've been doing this for 30 years, and I don't have enough business. So I almost stole my own dream. And in fact, I had gone through hired 3 companies. I'd gone through the application process with 3 good corporate companies, and all 3 made me an offer. And that morning on the sofa, I remember back to that story. Remember the story of Alexander the Great where he burned his boats? Remember, he shows up on the island and he realizes he's outnumbered, so he gathers his army and he marches back to the shore. And the guys think they're going to hop on the boats and sail away and come back and fight another day, but his order is burn the boats, right? So the only option they have is to turn and fight. So that morning, my decision, I was going to burn my boats. I called the 3 companies and said, thank you very much, but no thank you. And I made the decision that I was going to start my own business. Like, I said yes to my dream. And a key part of that, looking back now, is the emotional commitment that I went into the business. I didn't go in thinking, I'll give this a try, and if it doesn't work out, I'll go take a corporate gig. I did not go into that way. I went into it like literally feeling as if I burned my boats. This is my only option. This is my dream. And I went into it with 100% emotional commitment. And I'll tell you now, I am convinced that has played a key role in the huge success that I've gratefully enjoyed over the past 8 years.
Your website has a big quote in the middle of it. It says, choose outrageous courage. Seems like this is the beginning of that story.
Well, finding my courage, is interesting. Very soon, within a few months of after the split, I was walking on the bay and I was crying, and I was thinking, like, how the hell did my life, how did this happen? And I had this realization that I had become risk adverse. I couldn't think of one example of something riskier out of my real comfort zone that I had done in the past 30 years. And that was a real epiphany. It was one of those moments, like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 right? Where everything gets quiet and in my own little space. I thought, wow, how did this happen to me? And I made a decision that day on the bay that I was going to do something risky. And all the way home to my house, I was thinking, well, what do I want to do? well, I could bungee jump. I'm like, gosh, I don't want to hurt my back. I'm 50 years old. And I thought, hey, I'm in San Diego. I can go to Torrey Pines and go hang gliding. And